Hey everyone, it's Alexis. I hope you are all doing well today. If you are just tuning in, this is a part 2 in a 3-part video series that I am doing on all the new dies that I've released with chapter 2. So if you haven't checked out video 1, I went through all of the thinlits, the floral vases and vessels, the floral alphabet, the In the Meadow die set. So if you are someone who loves flowers for card making or anything like that, head on over to that video on our YouTube page and check that out. This is part 2, and today I'm still talking about thinlits, but now I'm talking about 3D flower making. And for those of you who might not be into 3D flower making for bouquets and things, I've got a couple other ideas that might interest you, so stick around for that. But specifically, I'm going to talk to you about Lisianthus, and that is how you say it, Lisianthus. There is a shorter term that's used in the floral world. They're called Lissies, but this is actually my favorite flower. I love Lisianthus, and I try to use it in all the bouquets I make as often as I can. But it is a really beautiful branch stem kind of flower that blooms at varying different times. So you have these beautiful buds that bloom really nice and full and open. They almost look a little bit of like a mix between a rose and a peony and a carnation. It's kind of like, they're all very different, but they're beautiful. But then you get all these little floral buds that then open as the weeks come. So you have a flower that you start off with a few and then you end with a lot of them. They come in a variety of tones and colors, and I just can't wait to show you how to make them today. I've got a whole bouquet ready to go. I'm going to show you step by step how to cut them, how to shape them, tips and tricks on how to shape them, and then finally how to assemble them. So stick around, we're gonna jump right into that, and it's a step-by-step, but also I've got a few project ideas for you as well. So let's talk Lisianthus. That's often a very hard name to pronounce and enunciate. So I just wanted to let everyone know that in the flower field, these are often called Lissies, if that makes you feel a little bit better, because it took me a while to learn it's Lisianthus, but Lissies is kind of the more common name. They can often be mistaken for the look of like a rose or a peony, and that's why I kind of like them, is they're not as large scale as a garden rose or as a peony, but you can still get that really structured feel, or you can shape the petals to let it feel more a little organic. I do feel like the top of those petals have a little bit of a wavy effect to them when you see them in person. But they do grow in a variety of colors, which is what I love, because then you can really customize them to the space that you might have in your house. So you'll find them in apricot or pale pink, lavender, yellow. They do a deep purple, a blue violet. They do white, green, red. There is quite a variety of them out there, and you can also just do them in any color you please, in any crepe paper color you like. But if you're looking for a more realistic kind of take on them, those are the colors that you typically find this specific varietal in. So this is the size of the packaging I wanted to show you, and on the inside of the packaging, this is what you get. Now, I have to thank Jen Ogborn, who really helped me hone in on the shape of this flower, because I took like an actual flower and pulled it apart and was trying to find something that felt realistic to me. And so I broke it down into a few key components. You've got I gave 2 pieces here, so you can cut more of the petal shapes at once, so less cutting, you get more at a same time. Then the interior of the flower is from this shape right here. So this is your, I believe it's the stamen is what they call it. And I will show you how to put this one together. Then you've got these 2 smaller petals, and those are to help create the buds. So with this particular flower, they have on the same stem, you will have multiple offshoots, and you'll have some that are open or mid-bloom, and then you have some that are tightly closed in a bud. So I wanted to be realistic and truthful to this type of flower, so I gave you some smaller petals that not only will help you with like the interior of the flower, but also will allow you to create the bud shape as well. And then you've got this piece right here to create the leaves.
And this piece right here is the sepal, which is the bottom part of the flower. So I'm gonna walk you through on how to create all of those, but I did wanna share a fun little story about when I was actually creating these. So I hand drew the petals themselves, and I wasn't sure if I was making them too big or too small, so I hand drew them out and hand cut them out of crepe paper. And I, at the time when we were designing all these, we were still working from home and had no flower stem wire with me. So I took a paintbrush. I just grabbed the next closest thing. I took a paintbrush and I assembled, was a prototype of the original one, and then it got changed. I sized down the petals and I changed some other elements within it as well. But I just wanted to show like how you could actually take this and turn it into something that you work with all the time. So I always think of those pens and pencils I would see at a doctor's office or a school where they'd have the flower attached to the top of the pen. And so I think I might make a couple of them for some of my teacher friends. But wanted to show you kind of where this die started and now where it's gone to. So first and foremost, let's cut a few of the elements so you can see what you can cut with. Now I'm going to be using my Sidekick today because what's lovely about this particular die set is that they are small enough to go through the Sidekick, and that's not the case with every 3D flower that we have, but with this one in particular, it happens to work. So I'm going to cut out one of my centerpieces. And I will say with crepe paper, I get away with cutting through 2 layers at a time, we'll say. But it does kind of push down the texture if you do that. So if you want to maintain the texture and it not flatten, like it flattened these 2 together, I don't mind so much because I know I'm gonna be sculpting and manipulating them, and I'm gonna lose that texture a little bit anyway. So it's completely up to you what you prefer to do. Okay, so when you go to make one of these flowers, depending on the size of the bloom that you want to create, if you want to create one that's more open and full, or if you want to create one that's small and just still like opening up from the bud, that will kind of tailor how many of these petals that you're going to cut. Now I'm going to show you how to create a full bloom today, so one that's opened up and is really big in size. So you're gonna want at least 12 petals for that, and you'll see why in just a minute. You can cut more if you want to. Lisianthus are not fairly large blooms when they do open up. There's few petals, but they open very wide. So it looks like they're a very big flower when they're fully opened, but there's actually not that many petals involved. So bear that in mind, although you can make whatever you want. There's no rhyme and reason with this. You can have fun and make whatever type of flower you want. If you are gonna make one of the buds, I'd recommend cutting about 4 to 6 of the smaller ones. I've got just enough to create 2 leaves right here. I've got 1 stamen and 1 sepal. So that's all you need to make one of the larger scale flowers. So let's talk about sculpting. Now with this particular flower, there's a lot of different things you can do. One thing that I like to do is use my fold and form tool, which I'm gonna open this up so I can grab it out. I like to use the fold and form tool. I also use the die on this particular one, and I'll show you why in a second. But I kind of like freehand figuring out what works for me. And with this particular flower, I found that I needed to use 2 different kind of things for it to get the shape that I wanted to see from it. Although you can still achieve the shape without using the die, but I wanted a very I wanted a very kind of like sharp kind of shape. So the first thing I want to note is that you'll see I've got my petals opening up and away. So this gives it kind of a rose-esque look. You don't have to do it like that. You could also do something like this, where you get more of a wavy look. And I would keep adding more and more petals to this particular one. So it's really ultimately what you want to achieve with it. If you want something that's a little bit more closed and looks like it's starting to open, you would do something tighter in the center. So I know I want to do mine very open. So I'm going to use my fold and form tool and insert the crepe paper, and I'm going to pull it away from myself. And that gives it a really nice kind of beginning shape to give it the curl that I want the petal to take. Then I'm going to take my two fingers, my thumbs and my pointer fingers, and put it towards the center and just pull and push at the same time so that I create this concave look to my petal. So you can see right there. That's going to help me shape it. Now here's where I pull the die in. You can pull anything sharp really. And I want that to have a little bit more of a curl to it. So I'm using the die to create a sharper edge right there. So I've got just a little bit more of a sharp curl opening. You don't have to do that for all of them, but let's go ahead and shape all these petals real quick. Now that we've got all of our petals shaped for the large scale portion of it, let's talk wire. So there are many types of floral wire out there, but I just want to give you a little tip on how to select the right floral wire, we'll say. So there's different what they call gauges, and the floral wire by gauge typically means thickness. So the smaller the gauge, the thicker and sturdier the wire. The higher the gauge, the more flimsy it gets. So depending on the type of flower you're making, you might want something with a higher gauge because you want it to be like a little bit more floppy and free-flowing, kind of like tulips are. Tulips are very delicate. Or you might want a smaller gauge because you need a lot of structure, like something like a rose or hydrangea. Those are very like strong stalk flowers, we'll say. So I happen to know from using Lisianthus that they're a very sturdy flower. So I wanted to work with lower gauges. So I have a combination of 16 gauge wire, which is a little bit thicker and sturdier. And then I've got 18 gauge, which is still pretty sturdy, but a little bit more flexible. And I'm going to use that for my buds and for my leaves. And then from the actual flowers, I'm using the 16 gauge. So just a little tidbit on that. You're going to want to grab next, you want to grab your glue gun, turn that on. You're going to want to grab the wire you're going to work on. And I'm going to grab an 18 gauge real quick. Actually, no, I'm going to grab 16. I tend to work on the long portion of the wire, typically until I figure out what I'm going to use it for. So I'll create the bloom on the length of the wire, and then I'll cut it down to size depending on what I actually want to create with it. I will say this, if you were planning to use these flowers on like a flower wreath shape or on a wreath, I would definitely recommend going 18 gauge or higher. You want a flimsier one because you want to be able to wrap the wire around the wreath. And I'll show you one I've got going because I will show you where I messed up and I used a thicker gauge and it's just not quite shaping the way I want it to. So the first thing you're going to do, I'm just going to move these petals off to the side. I'll show you how to shape these in just a little bit, is you're going to take your centerpiece right here. And these first two are going to act as the center of your flower. Now, how you choose to do the center of your flower, you can do it in a couple different ways. If you want one that's a bit more open, which is what I'm going to show you right now, we're going to show it with the center portion of the flower. Or if you want something that's in the process of opening, you can just use those small bud leaves in the center and do those around the floral wire right here. and then you don't have to use the centerpiece at all. So it really and truly depends on the flower you're choosing to show. I did one right here where it's starting to open, so I've still got portions of the flower center in there. I think that's what I like about this flower is there's so many different stages of it that you can create a variety of them. But if you are going to be doing one that's open like this, you're gonna take these two first ones and you're gonna shape with your finger, you're gonna shape the top piece right here, one direction, and then you're gonna shape this piece the other direction. So that when you put them on the wire, they essentially will line up back to back like that, and then will look like this. So now let me show you how you're gonna adhere that. These pieces, you're gonna take and hold this bottom piece firmly, and you're gonna twist. You're gonna twist them nice and tight. You can also leave them open if you wanted to. I like to give it a little bit of a different look. So I like to twist these last four. And if you wanted to, you could do 2 rows of this one, but I just think one is more than enough. So then you're gonna add, I've got my hot glue here. Gonna add some glue to one side of that stamen piece and put it all the way into the top. And then I like to shape that piece around the wire so that by the time I put the other side on, it'll be completely covered. So if you have very sensitive hands to hot glue, I would recommend getting your glue gun accessories out with your glue gun so that it doesn't burn your hands. I can't feel it anymore because I do work with hot glue so much, so it doesn't really burn my fingers anymore. That's the life of a crafter, if you will. So now I'm gonna go to the other side of the wire right there, and I'm gonna add glue onto the other side of the wire. And then I'm gonna take and wrap this piece around until I get it lined up again perfectly on the other side, like that. And then you're just gonna wrap that around the wire as well. You're just trying to cover as much as you can of the green. Most of it's going to be covered by the flower itself, but you just wanna try to get as much of that top part covered. And then you'll push those 2 pieces out. So that's where we're starting. That's what it looks like. Okay. Then you're just gonna add glue right here along this bottom piece. I like to do it little by little so that I can place where I want these other portions of the stem to go. And you're just gonna wrap that back and around. And I like to make sure that I'm like pulling the crepe paper so they don't all end up in the same spot. So then that's where working with crepe paper is nice, because then you can decide where things are placed by just adjusting where you push and pull. Okay. So got those nice and firm on there, and then I'll just manipulate these to where I want them to be. And that right there is your flower center. Nothing much to it. You can, if you wanted to add another row, you could, just to make it more full. Entirely up to you. Now, what you're gonna do with the actual flower is, you'll see I created some of these to be a little bit more closed, and those are the ones I knew I was gonna place around the center, as if this was just starting to open. So you'll see as you place this in, you're gonna line up the bottom of that with the bottom of this. You can also do it higher if you wanted to, like up here, and wrap it around the wire. That's totally fine. Either one will work. So you can place it right here or down at the very bottom. I'm probably gonna do a little bit higher up just because I found it to be a bit easier when I was doing it. So I typically we'll just put a little bit of glue almost in a triangle shape right there. And then lay in my element right about there, mostly so I can glue it around the wire too. Just those first ones, I want them to be nice and tight around the centerpiece. And I'm going to repeat that with the next one, but on the alternate side. Now I'm doing this because I want the shape of this a little bit tight, and then I want the rest of it to be very open. So once it's on, you can pull these away and manipulate them, but you want to do that once the glue is very dry and not still sticky. I use hot glue because I prefer it. It makes the flowers a little bit more stable for me, but also it allows me to kind of manipulate things a little bit. Now there's a couple different ways you can put the flower petals on. I'm going to show you a way that I prefer because I can still get the same effect. So I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4 of these, and I'm going to glue, and that leaves me 2, 4, 6. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to take these 4 right here, and I'm going to line them up. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right here on the side of this petal. And then I'm going to glue the end of the other petal right into it. Okay, and I'm going to do that with this whole row of 4. Now I'm not gluing the whole portion of it, I'm just gluing the one side. And I'm gluing to the interior. So basically you're going to end up with this kind of cup shape. And what you're going to do, I am going to trim down this wire just because it's getting in my way. So let me grab some wire cutters real quick. Much easier to work with, smaller wise. So then you're going to take this and you're going to place it in the center of these buds, and then you're just going to simply glue them around at the base. And you can see how much easier it is to kind of just work them in a wrapping way around them. And it is a structured flower, so you can do that. Now I'm only going to glue towards the bottom end right here because I want to be able to pull these petals away and make the flower feel more open. So I'm going to start at the one end, and I'm just gluing at the bottom. And then I'll even just glue this one where I want it at the very end. Let's see. I'm gonna put that one there. So these other ones, I'm just gonna glue the very bottom piece. I'm not even gonna glue the top portion of the petal. And I'm just gluing it onto the wire, and I'll manipulate the petals as I move it around. Okay. So once they're on there, then you can start to peel the petals back in a way so that they're a little bit more open. And I'll take this bottom piece and hold it between my 2 fingers and grip it tight and twist and spin it so that I get a really nice firm area that I'm going to put my floral tape on. So you're going to do the same with the next set. So you can do this in 3s and 5s or 4s and 6s. I find that those are the numbers that work the best for this little technique. And I think it just makes the putting them together go faster, because then you're not having to worry about like, oh, where do I place this one? Oh, what do I do with this one? It kind of just gives you that cup shape, and then you just fit the center of the previous shape in, and in no time your flower's together. Okay, so you notice this one's a little bit bigger of a cup. Again, I'm just gonna place this in the center and kind of figure out where I want it to go. Okay. And I just put a little bit of glue in there. Don't put a ton, and I just figure out the shape as I go around. I don't do the whole thing at once so that I can really figure out where I want to glue and where I want to pull away. And you'll see I'm not using a ton of glue because with gray paper you don't need a bunch. So I'm just going to glue this one little piece in place. And once I have them on there, that's when I'm going to start peeling it away. You can open it up. You can add, if you want this to be a really full bloom, you can add another row on there. That's entirely up to you. I just add a little bit more glue right here to this last petal. Okay. And also, the larger you kind of pull these away, you can also shape them further out if you want to, make the petals even larger than they are. That'll also open it up a bit. And then if you see, you're like, that doesn't look quite right to me, I think I'm gonna add 2 more petals right here. I've got some off to the side. I always cut a few extra in case I wanna add anything on to make something feel a little bit more full. I'll just add a couple of larger petals on. And kind of look and go, this side needs a little bit more. So there's one bloom. Now you're gonna, at the bottom, you're gonna adhere this piece right here. So I just start by adhering the one end. And I don't worry about it going to the very bottom because I'm gonna use floral tape at the very bottom and that'll cover up any pieces left over. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit of glue as I manipulate this around the bottom of the petal. And you'll notice I do it in small sections because I want to pull the crepe paper to where I need those sepals to land on this. So like these last ones, I'll pull the crepe paper a bit so that they end up in different spots so it's even around the bottom. Again, pinch and twist. And then I'll just take my fingers and curl these, but you can also take this and curl them away. But I just find my fingers do the trick, so. You can also glue them in place if you so like. And then for my branches, I will take a thinner wire, and on one end of my leaf, I'm gonna pull it out a bit and give it some shape. I'm going to apply a thin layer of glue right here to one end of it and place my wire directly into that. Make sure it's firmly on there. And then I'm going to take the other leaf and do the same thing. And then I'm going to align that with the back side. So then you get a full leaf shape. And you've used the center to overlap to cover it. And then you can add some floral tape to the bottom of this, and then you'll add that on to your stem with some more floral wire, or floral tape, I should say. And then you'll just wrap that on there. Now, to create these smaller bud, this can be done a couple of different ways. I've done them where they're a little bit more closed like this, but it's still starting to open. You can also do them how I'm going to show you right now, which is how they kind of look in person. So I'm going to take another thin piece of wire, and I'm going to put glue right here down the center of the small bud and place the floral wire directly into it and wrap it around. Okay, and I'm going to do that around and around until I have all my pieces on. Okay, now I've got all those on there. Now I'm going to twist them around the stem. And the reason you want to do at least 6 to 8 is so that you can get this natural kind of bud shape, like that. You can twist and twist until they're nice and tight. And then what you do is you can put some floral tape on there if you want, or if you want to make them more realistic, typically how this flower looks when you do it is you would wrap this all the way around it. I'm just gonna actually do it so you can see what it looks like. This is like if the bud was really tight, hasn't even started to like open yet. So you can do something like this, and it will have the bud just beginning to open. And then you can add those on. I've got a couple here done, so I can show you what they look like once you add all the branches and stuff together. So this particular one right here, you can see I did a more open bloom. I have my sepal right here. This is on the main stem. This large flower is on the main stem right here. And then I've taken a smaller stem here and here, and I've added them onto the main stem with flower tape, or floral tape as they call it, so that at the end of it all, they're all like on one stem together. So you can do that. You can do a couple of open ones and a smaller one with no leaves if you want to. You can do one small, one medium starting to open, one open with some of the leaves on there. The leaves are super fun if you make like a bunch of them too, and then you can just have them ready to go as you add. So as you can see, you can make them all look uniquely different. And then you just kind of gather them all together and you've got a beautiful bouquet. So, and you can add these in with other flowers that we already have in our flower collection, and you can make a unique bouquet of a bunch of different flowers, or you can do something where you just do all Lisianthus in one color. It's totally up to you. I did want to show another option you can do with the petal leaves. So someone in our office in the UK did this flower. Now these are the Lisianthus petals, but you can see they've taken their own kind of like spin on how to put them together. What I love about these is that they have inked the petals. So they look like a gradiated kind of pattern on there, which I think is absolutely stunning. And then on a few of them, they've even added the new liquid gloss with the dewdrops. So that's another fun little feature you can do once you've got them all together. You can also, instead of using the center that comes with the flower, you can use a combination of that with the floral stamens that we sell in groups. So you'll see those on our website. So you really can kind of pick and choose. You can put in some faux foliage with them, or you can make your own foliage. You can use real foliage with fake flowers. The sky's the limit with that. You can also use them for gift wrap. I love the idea of putting a flower on like a special gift. My best friend's birthday is coming up, and I think I'm gonna do this. I'm taking her to the flower fields nearby, and I love the idea of adding this on to her gift since it's like very bespoke to what we're doing. But again, same kind of petals, but you can see it's very different how it's added. And then we've used the woodland stems right in here just to add a little bit more. And we've again added those dewdrops on with the liquid gloss. So you can see how you can get a more realistic look to them. You can also take the flowers, trim off the wire, and add them to a flower kind of ring and wreath and create your own. Now this is where I wanted to point out. I used way too thick of a wire right here. And so it's fine right there. I just realized halfway through, I was like, oh, that's gonna be troublesome for other places on here. So I made sure all the other flowers I did were on a very a much flimsier wire. So definitely a higher gauge so that I could manipulate them easier around. Now, you don't even have to do that. You could literally just hot glue them on. And most people will add like the fake foliage first and then go in and glue the flowers to it. I wanted to like just build this as I went. So I'm literally tying them on and then I'll hot glue them into place once I find an arrangement that I like. So like I'm starting to like that. So I'll probably glue those ones to each other so they don't move. And then I'll cut off the excess as I go. But I literally just was like, okay, I need to use a thinner gauge. I'm gonna use some white. I'm gonna use some more of the smaller ones. And then you just wrap the wire around the wreath as you're creating it. And then you're gonna cut off the excess. So there's a couple different ways to do wreaths. There's all kinds of tutorials online on how to wire these up. I just do it with the wire as I go and just secure them in place and then chop off the excess wire that I don't need so I can repurpose it for other things. And then once I'm done, I'll go in and I'll add in foliage, like I'll tuck it in and glue it in place. But you can create your own kind of bespoke home decor with these flowers too. You can also do this as a flower wreath that you for a party or for a first birthday, for a little kid, or for princesses. It's a fun little making activity for friends. So it doesn't just have to be bouquets. You can do individual stems like this and put them in a vase around your house. You can do a full bouquet if you wanted to, and add the differing colors. And you can also use them for bespoke kind of gifting.
Thanks so much for sticking around to find out how the Lisianthus is made, or how I prefer to call them the Lizzies. Seeing it go from this hand-cut one on the end of a paintbrush to these beautiful blooms right here is kind of a dream come true in its own way, especially if you're a flower lover like I am. So whether you're making singular blooms to go into the bouquets in your house, or you're coloring them to how you might like them to match your house, or even just adding some fun little details to either a wedding gift or a bridal shower gift, or even decorating tables to match the gifts, there's really a lot you can do with flowers. I know I want to do some more wreaths and some more flower crowns. My friends all seem to really like those. But if you happen to pick up the Lisianthus and make anything, please tag us using the hashtag #MyMakingStory and tag us on social media so we can see and share with everyone else. Until next time, take care of yourself and have fun making flowers. I know I certainly do, and they bring me a lot of joy, and I hope they bring a lot of joy to you as well.